Dr. Alan Long will lead us in prayer.
Thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day today that you've allowed us to enjoy. We thank you for the opportunity to be here to serve and to lead. Father, we thank you for all those in the Alabama Department of Education who are doing leading and serving for the families and the students and for the state of Alabama. Father, we ask that you be with the leaders of our country, guide them to do those things that would be pleasing to you and for our state. Father, we ask that you give our state leaders insight and wisdom into your ways. Father, we thank you for allowing us to be a participant, each of us, in this process. We thank you for this state, for this great state that you've allowed us to enjoy and live in. Lord, we ask that you bless this meeting and lead us to do the things that are pleasing to you today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Long. At this time, Dr. Mackey will invite our guests.
All those students, come on up front. Now, how we're going to do this, we're doing a big crew of you. So we've got Coleman County, Calhoun County, and Fayette County? Yes. Is that right?
Yes.
So what I'm going to do, y'all going to have to stand. We'll have enough chairs for you. Come up here to the front. You're all going to be teachers, so. And there were some firm handshakes. I just love shaking hands with you young ladies. Come on, now let's move down just a little bit so everybody can be seen. So I want to just take a little time, as we've done the last couple of years, where you can, very quickly, I want you to go through and tell us, again, your name, where you're in school, what year you are. There's some freshmen up here. I thought they were all seniors, and they're grown-ups. And what you think you want to teach. So, and then we'll let the board members ask you the questions they want to ask. So, get nervous. Don't be really nervous. I'm sorely disappointed. Where's my AEA folks that help with this? We've got our sponsors back there and our FTA sponsors, some of whom I know. So, I only have one challenge. Now, I have to challenge you for next year. I know they said we had 2,500 students in our Future Teachers programs across the state this last year. And we're targeting 3,000 next year. Let's please recruit a boy. One male teacher. No, we are so glad to have you young ladies. So I'm going to start down here. If you'll and just introduce us. Introduce yourself. You know, and what you think you want to teach.
Okay, my name is Addison Sanford. I'm a sophomore at Fayette County High School, and I want to teach kindergarten. And I would love to go back to my home county and teach there.
Good. Yeah.
My name is Lucy Lowe. I'm a senior at Fayette County High School, and I also want to teach kindergarten, and I also want to come back to Fayette.
Good morning. My name is Gracelyn Westbrook, and I'm a junior at Fayette County High School. I actually don't plan to pursue a career in teaching. I'd like to be a juvenile justice lawyer. So.
I'm Kendall Haley. I'm a sophomore at Fayette County High, and I think I want to teach first grade elementary, but I don't know where.
Hi, I'm Faith Brandon. I'm a freshman at Fairview High School, and right now I'm between teaching facts and first grade.
Okay. Hi, I'm Natalie Herron. I'm a freshman at Good Hope High School, and I'm stuck between either elementary, third grade, or English, and I would like to go back to my home.
My name is Georgia DeLoach. I'm a junior at White Plains High School. If I had to teach, I'd probably teach third grade or probably high school, kind of in between of those.
My name's Venom DeLoach. I go to White Plains High School. I'm a junior. If I had to teach, same thing, I'd probably teach third grade.
My name is Quinn Fiesel. I'm a senior at White Plains High School, and I'm going to do third grade biology or ninth grade biology. My name is Kinsley Jones, and I'm a junior at White Plains High School, and I would like to pursue a degree in early childhood education at Jacksonville State University. And just like they said, I would love to go back to my hometown and teach at White Plains Elementary School.
Good for you, Jack State. I'm Jack State along. We're all about it. That's good. Okay, so I'll ask the first question, if I may, and then let our board members ask some questions. So, this is kind of a hard one. And everybody probably can't answer, but anybody that thinks, we want obviously more teachers. We appreciate young people like you, and we're also fine with folks
Yes.
who study it but think, I really want to do something else, but you want to work with juveniles, which is great. What is a barrier that keeps your friends from wanting to be teachers? Like, if people who don't want to be teachers, is there a reason they don't want to be a teacher? Down there on the end.
I think what most people would say, and this is also what I get told a lot, is the money. They're like, you're not going to make any money if you're a teacher. And so I feel like that's what keeps a lot of people from pursuing that degree, is because everybody just thinks about money, money, money. So.
Well, this group's worked really hard to get those numbers up. And we are now the highest paid, we have the highest starting pay of all the southeastern states. Which I don't think all your friends and all know that. So we got to get the word out. Yes, somebody else says.
For me, it would probably be like the college, the money, like trying to go to college and pay for student loans and stuff.
Yes.
So, because this is my twin sister.
Yes.
So it's both of us. If we're trying to both go to college, it's going to be really expensive for my dad. So that's going to be the only barrier between me and teaching.
Good point. I would also point out, I'll have a counterpoint to everything. But also know that we do have in Alabama, now it's not for every, and not for elementary, unfortunately. We need to work on that. But we do have loan repayment programs. So the state of Alabama will repay up to $25,000 in student loans, and there's the federal student loan repayment program too. So we can help with that with people who will stay in the state. But you have to check the field first, because not every field qualifies. So that's something we've got a shortage of elementary teachers, so I was glad to hear that. But again, that's not something I don't know that if people are in high school making a decision, they don't necessarily know that the state will help them pay for a degree to become a teacher. Okay, I'll try to be quiet now. I know.
I've got the easy question, since you got Jackson.
Oh, yes.
Where's your first choice to go to college?
I'm leaning towards UNA just because I have heard excellent things about that, and it's far enough from home but not too far. But I also, when we were at the state competition, I love Auburn. But it's very far. So I want to be far but not too far.
Yes,
I am staying in our hometown. I'm going to go to Bevel for 2 years, and I think I'm going to transfer to the University of Alabama. So I haven't decided. I may do the online program through UWA. So I have some options.
I'd like to go to Wallace State Community College because that's where my mom works, so I have a little bit of free time.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just it's a campus that's really close to my heart. So then I'd like to transfer after 2 years to a 4-year college of my choice. Kind of leaning towards UA. So.
I want to go to Alabama because I want to become vet. And also it's not that far from home.
Well, as of right now, I'm planning on fast tracking at Wallace State, but after I finish out my 2 years there, I plan to transfer to Jacksonville State.
I also plan to go to Wallace State for 2 years, and then I want to transfer to Athens.
Good choice.
My dream college is Georgia University because my dad is a big Georgia fan. But if I had to decide, probably JSU.
Okay.
Mine's either Auburn or JSU.
JSU or Alabama.
Definitely JSU for me as well, but I may go to Gadsden State for 2 years and then transfer.
Good answers.
All good.
So smart. I know some have said you may go to the 2-year college for 2 years. Are you all enrolled in dual enrollment classes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that will be even shorter.
That's right.
That's great. That's great.
Well, is there anything that you need from us? Just like you were talking about, maybe helping with the elementary loan repayment. Is there anything out there that you have heard or see that we as the board, maybe we can't do anything, but we should be aware of and maybe could help in some regard? Do you have something? You look like you were going to speak about it. Go ahead.
I'm thinking.
And it's okay. We would love to hear because we cannot help or assist if we don't know.
This is something that's just recently been done that I think is a great opportunity. They just came to our school the other day and told us about through Jacksonville State University a free dual enrollment class for people who want to be teachers. And so I just recently signed up for that. And I thought that was a super amazing opportunity, and just wanted to say thank you for that.
I think that is great.
Very good, thank you for telling us. Yeah. Anybody else? I mean, we won't bite, we want to hear. But you can just email us.
My question is there a teacher that had a super influence on you, and what was the characteristic that that teacher had?
Oh my gosh.
Mine sits right back there in that pink dress. Yes, so she's my freshman biology teacher, and she just.
She had a really big influence on Quinn ever since she was in 9th grade. That's her favorite teacher. She's taught TA for her and everything like that. Teaches for her every single year for her 9th grade students. It's just a really good influence for her.
And that's great, because you all need to look at those teachers and have those same characteristics. Who else has one?
My mom, she's sitting there. She teaches family and consumer sciences at Brewer, but before she was at Fairview, where I go, and I've just been able to see her influence on students and hear how they talk about her, and she's just a great teacher.
I can kind of go off that. My mom is the principal at my school, and nobody sees all of the hard work that she puts in. It's not a 8 to 3 job. It will never be an 8 to 3 job, and some people don't realize that. It's all day, working overtime, being on the weekends, going to the sporting events. So she always says it's about the kids. It's not about anything else. It's what's best for the kids. So it's time for her to retire, but she won't, because she wants to put the kids first. And so that's probably been the biggest part of me, because I see how hard she works. And so
And you see how she loves, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and make us all cry here.
People, it's a long time away. 20 years from now, they're gonna be talking about y'all the same way.
That's right.
We talk together.
Mine's right there in the blue shirt. She's our sponsor. She's not a teacher, she's our librarian.
But a teacher is a librarian.
But, so she's not a teacher. She did teach, but now she's a librarian. But the first day I came in, I was like, I wanted to be a librarian. And she, as soon as I came in, she ate me up. She wanted to help me. She wanted to furthermore our chapter, and she restarted our MTA chapter. We did it for our first year was last year. We had it and then it quit, and then she started back up. And she actually threw a big signing for us, so we don't get the recognition like athletes do when they sign. So she threw us a big sign and recognized us, and it just has made us feel really special.
That's good.
Well, I was gonna follow up with a question. Just raise your hand, you don't have to say a word. How many of you have parents that are teachers? Family members, so just 2 of you. Okay. That's great. I mean, I think that's wonderful, because you're organically going toward teaching as a profession, which I think is wonderful.
Okay. Now, you are all, and your teachers, we're gonna let you decide what to do. You're welcome to stay with us. We probably we're gonna be done by lunchtime. I'm pretty sure it's a fairly, May's usually kind of a short work session, because we're winding the school year down too. But you may be also looking at your watches and saying, no, we need to be back home at a certain time. We will not be offended if you need to take on off too. But thank y'all for bringing these young ladies down and investing in their lives.
Can we get a picture of you
Oh,
and them?
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Get us all in?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Are you ready? Keep following.
Okay, now, wait a minute. Now, everybody Okay, take a step forward, and we'll ask the board members to come around and get behind you, and let's get one with all of us together. Or, that may, some of the y'all are taller than some of us, so that may not work. We may have to do a sorority squat just a little bit.
Sorority squat.
I'm the short guy.
Come on.
I'm gonna send these to quick legs and all.
I think I
Oh, come on. All right, y'all squat again.
Squatting.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. Congratulations on your son.
We'll find a way to
Very proud. Thank you.
Good luck, be
But I'm gonna, but I okay, board members. You see, it is a short. It's even shorter than May's always a short agenda, but this is the shortest one we've had in a long time. So we didn't have any colleges coming up for review this month, which we usually have one or so. So I want to point out the things we do have. The last item will take a little bit of time, and then I'm going to also talk a little bit about. We've got Tina and Connor here with us to help me, but talk a little bit about where we are with the budget, the legislature, which is close to adjourning, and some of those things. So we have a few other things to discuss. They're just not action items, which means, of course, June will be kind of a short meeting. You see the first several deal with, and Dr. Chestnut's taking care of me here, so I lost my agenda. But we are recognizing, first of all, our physical education teachers. So you saw, and they've left you a prize here. It's the 100th anniversary of the association. It's kind of long, but it's physical education, dance, recreation. And they have their big conference this month. And they are recognizing, because it's the 100th anniversary, some special, thank you very much, and I'll let you have yours back. Some special teachers. So they have also from Bluff Park Elementary, interestingly, the physical education teacher, elementary physical education teacher of the year, and then you see Jennifer Harbison from Bumpus Middle School, also a Hoover, the health educator of the year, and then Justin Kelly from Phillips Academy in Birmingham City as the middle school teacher of the year, and then the high school physical ed teacher of the year is Brandy Hall from Jasper High School. So all of them plan to be with us next month, and then we'll sort of be a special, really a focus on kind of special education in the meeting itself. Item 5 is the Oxford High School is our distinguished school this year from ACT. So ACT each year, you may remember, they recognize a school basically where they go out of their way to do exceptional work in preparing kids for college. And they look at a lot of metrics, including diversity and are all different kinds of students being prepared for college and how they score on the ACT. I know a couple of years ago it was Eufaula High School, and I can't remember where it was last year, but this year is Oxford High School. So again, we'll recognize them. Probably won't have any students with us, partially because it's the summer. It's always hard to get students to come to July and June meetings, but we'll have some folks from Oxford High School here with us. So those are the 5 kind of celebratory things. We do have a rule, which I have paper copies for you to look at, and I'm going to jump straight to that if that's okay. But any questions about those first ones? Those are pretty simple. Okay. Okay, if I may, Dr. Chesson, I'll let you pass these down. So there is a new parental leave law. Y'all probably have read about that. You've certainly seen it in Tina and Connor's updates. And there should be one extra one for Mary Kate also. So I may have given out more. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Here we go. Here's yours. Oh, you've got it. Okay. So I wasn't sure if it was going to be loaded in time in assembly. I knew they were working to try to get it in. So it's also in your assembly. So the Parental Leave Act, it's very fast because the legislature just passed it. The governor signed it, I believe, last week, but it goes into effect July 1st. But the law says that we have to make rules as to how the districts implement. And this is a very hot topic. Mr. Watts was with the CFOs last week, and I think this may have been the #1 topic people were asking questions about. And so we're kind of in a hurry to do rules, but the law also says that we're supposed to coordinate our rules with the 2-year college system, which is also involved in this, and the state personnel board. So in other words, they don't want a teacher, or, it doesn't apply to teachers. It applies to bus drivers, school secretaries, coaches, everybody. So they don't want an employee at the 2-year college system to be treated differently than an employee in a local K-12 or state employees. So we're trying to coordinate all that, and it's a bit complex because our employees are different. State employees are very different from local education employees. So you have a draft set of rules. I'm going to go over some of the most poignant things in here. And how this will come to you in June is now I'm pointing, I know Dr. Long and Ms. Mooney haven't gone through this yet. The rest of you have. We have 2 sets of rules. One will be proposed as an emergency rule. The emergency rule is effective immediately, but it runs out in like 120 days or something like that. Then in that time, we will propose a permanent rule, which has a 35-day public comment period, and then you can make it permanent after 35 days. Because our meetings are only 30 days apart, that means that we would skip the June meeting and it would be July before you can make it permanent. Thus the reason we have to run an emergency rule, because the law goes into effect July 1st. So we had to have something in effect July 1st, and the permanent rule could not actually take place until a number of days after the final vote. So the permanent rule doesn't actually go into place until August. All that's to say, there could be changes between the two. So during the public comment periods, obviously for the public to comment. So the emergency rule will be in place July 1, but the permanent rule, something might change a little bit, because we may get comments that say, well, we need to do this or that differently. Essentially what the law says, and I'll get some of this wrong, so Tina and Jason, you're welcome to jump up. John, our new attorney, is with us today. John's very, very new with us. We may have more attorneys hiding. So if you're a live birth mother, and there are some other stipulations too. So there are some provisions in for adoption, and there are provisions for stillbirth, but most of our incidences will be a live birth mother, and you get 8 weeks of leave, which can start on the day the event happens. So it's not pre. So we've been asked that question. Can I take like a week of my paternity leave, maternity leave, parental leave, something? They tell me to call it parental leave before I actually have the baby. And no is the answer, because it begins the day of the event. But it can be taken intermittently. So a person can say take 3 weeks at the birth, and then they can go back to work for a while, and then they can take, a week later and a week later or something like that. It runs concurrently with family medical leave. So family medical leave allows people to take leave with it's not extra leave, it's not special leave, it's not paid leave. It just means if you're on family medical leave, you can't be, your job can't be affected. You can't be terminated for taking the leave or something like that. Family medical leave is 12 weeks, and this is 8 weeks of paid leave. So they run concurrently. So that means somebody can't say, well, I'm going to take my 8 weeks of state leave and then I'm going to take 12 additional weeks. So I get 20 weeks. They could take 4 additional weeks, but those are not paid by the state. So they either have to take their accumulated sick leave or they have to take those without pay if they take 4 additional weeks. And there's some provision in the law about you don't just get 4 weeks. There has to be a medical, what do they call it, catastrophic situation. So something's, you know, I mean, there are a lot of issues that can be catastrophic, but it has to be a catastrophic situation for you to get the additional family medical leave. Because it takes place July 1st, then somebody has a baby on July the 2nd, they will qualify. They can wait and start taking their leave when school starts back. Because it's intermittent and it lasts for 24 months. It lasts for 12 months. So they could say, start their leave if their first day back to school is August 8th, they could wait and start their leave on August 8th and then take their leave, you know, for 8 weeks, or they could take 2 weeks and then take, you know, more of it later in the year or something like that. There is a provision for paternity also. So fathers can also get 2 weeks of leave, not 8 weeks. Fathers can get 2 weeks of leave, and essentially it's the same rules. It can be taken upon the birth. It can be taken intermittently over the next 12 months. So if you had a mother and a father who were married and who were both employed by the schools, they could take, like the mom could take 8 weeks and then they could take 2 weeks after that, or they can take them at the same time. There's, you know, lots of options around that. There are many questions that have come up that we're trying to answer. So for instance, you can only have 1 set of 8 weeks of leave in a year. Now, that's come up because evidently we had a question from a district about a father who had 3 children in 1 year, 3 different moms, wanted to know if he could have 6 weeks of leave. The answer is no. You only have 2 weeks of leave. And I have a lot of questions about that, but it was bold of him to ask. So the answer is no. You only get one set of leave. I'm not saying that's a teacher, my host, but anyway, I don't know the districts. I don't want to know. But I'm telling you, that one's kind of far out there. But we've gotten 100 questions like that. What if? We have not tried to address every what if in the rules. The rules are straightforward, and then as there are what if questions, we will help answer those. Another thing that's important here is, remember, this is another, you know, one of those interesting things about the state board and how it's different from a local board. You're setting rules for local board employees and charter school employees, not State Department employees, which fall under the State Personnel Office. So again, remember, we're coordinating with personnel in the 2-year college system because we want our rules to be similar, but those rules are being set by the State Personnel Board. So the rules you're adopting will apply to all the local school systems, county and city boards and charter schools. And ask me questions about it.
I have just a question.
Yes.
So if a person, I'm going to say an administrator, has sick leave time already and vacation days, would they have to take these days first and then, how does that go?
They do not have to. So
Okay.
These are paid leave, so they don't count against your personal or sick days. But if you
Right.
said, you know, I want to keep my 8 weeks of paid leave and use them later because it can be intermittent. You could take
What you already have.
your leave, right? You could take your sick leave and
And
exhaust
perhaps
it or
vacation,
whatever.
because I know
Right.
that's what I did with both of my children, I had
That's
enough
right.
time. So I still could do that, and then this could be an addition.
And you could have this additionally, yes, ma'am.
Okay, or could I do this and then do that later?
You
Either way.
can, but there is a little bit of a provision for that. So one thing is that, you know, if your sick leave is sick leave, but let's say a person has
Vacation
8 weeks of
that's what I'm
accumulated leave, and they want to take this 8 weeks and then stack 8 more on top of it. That's not necessarily allowable because there has to be a catastrophic situation to justify taking that much leave in a row, which there could be.
I just
Child
wondered
could be in
if
the
the person
NICU
had
or
that
something.
as an option.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. But it is possible, but what those would they have to work out with the local superintendent, and there's actually a provision in the rules that the superintendent has to approve. So I should have said that. Before the leave is taken, the employee has to say, I want to take this parental leave, and here's my plan. So they have to lay out how many weeks they intend to take, all of that, and then the superintendent has to sign off on that before the leave starts. Obviously, we know people expect to have a normal birth and something goes wrong, the child ends up in the NICU for a while and things change, so it can be changed, but the plan has to be submitted that at least I want to start, and then you can amend the plan later.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Okay,
Yes.
in section 9(1), it says parental leave does not require the employee to exhaust/use. That means they don't have to use it. The word exhaust infers use it all, right?
Right.
Exhaust could mean use up, the word exhaust, but in this phrase, it means you don't have to use your leave.
That's right. You don't have to use your leave.
And I think we need to maybe clarify /use, because you don't exhaust it if you use it up, but.
Right, and some places only give you leave, extra leave after you've used up all your sick leave, and this
Right.
does not require that. You do not
This
have to
doesn't-
exhaust your
The
leave.
word exhaust doesn't mean you don't even use it, not use it up, which is what,
You don't use it at all. Right.
you don't.
You don't have to use your.
You don't have to use it at all, not just the exhaust. I mean, I'm trying to read and understand what I
Understand.
read.
Some of those are,
In our,
I was gonna say, some of those terms kind of came directly from state personnel, that's the
No,
wording that
We'll
we'll
take it
use.
back.
But obviously, that's what this process is for, if we need to clarify.
I understand, Attorney Shaw.
Somebody else had a
What
question.
about a teacher that has a baby on the last day of June?
Good question. Somebody has a baby on the last day of June does not qualify. And that question has come up, and I understand there are some people working with their OBs. I don't blame you.
I hear a C-section.
But it only, I mean, it goes into effect midnight, July 1.
Next year we have, yes.
Yeah.
It would, but I'm just.
Yeah.
Hold it.
Yeah.
You're gonna get in trouble.
Hold on.
So a person has to be employed by some local board of education at least a year before they can take advantage of this, is that right?
That is correct. Good point. So you must be employed for 12 months to take advantage of it. Now that doesn't, so let's say somebody has a baby July 1st this year, they qualify if they have been employed the last year. But they have to be employed for a year first. And one of the problems that we've run into in working with our sister agencies is, of course, are our employees 12-month employees or not? They are. Under family medical leave, they are, because they're paid in 12 checks. So even though teachers are generally on 9-month contracts or 10-month contracts, they're paid. They're all paid in 12 checks, and because you're paid in 12 checks under federal law, that makes you a full-time 12-month employee. Bus drivers are also the same category. Bus drivers are a little unusual because, as you know, a lot of bus drivers under federal law don't qualify as full-time employees. But under state law, they are full-time employees. So we're working through that. But if they're full-time bus drivers and they're drawing checks for 12 months, then they would qualify for this.
Dr. Mackey, have we calculated the financial impact of this law?
Yes.
Which is what I think we're always required
Yes, sir.
to do any law.
So the calculations are that in a typical year, according to, we go back to PHIP, basically. The only way we can get numbers is look at PHIP and the number of
Adoptions.
live births. Well, so PHIP doesn't keep up with adoptions. So,
That's what I'm saying.
So we're looking at live births, and in a year that's typically around 1,700. So we took the number 2,000, multiplied 2,000 by $120 a day, which is what the state allows for a sub, and that's what the law says we have to, or the budget says we reimburse districts at $120 a day for every day that teachers took, and the legislature put about $9.6 million in the budget to pay for it. So the calculation is simple. We do think that, and I've talked to both budget chairs, we think that's probably underfunded. We think it could be closer to $12 million. And there's a reason for that. The legislation changes in the process. So 9.6 covered what was originally written, but it got changed. Like they put in the fathers, leave for fathers 2 weeks, which was not in the calculation. So we think it probably will go up, but I've talked to both budget chairs and the governor's staff about when the legislature comes back in January and we do a supplemental budget, that money could be, just like this year we had to sup up the Principals Act, we could, and then we'll be 6 months in, so we'll know a little better about if there will be enough money to cover it or not. So we think the calculation, Dr. Reynolds, is probably $12 million a year. It's paid reimbursable to the districts. We're still working out the reimbursement, but basically, I don't know how often we're going to do it, but at some point the districts will have to turn into us that they have, this many days of leave. Basically, they need to be reimbursed for paternal and maternal, and it will reimburse them at $120 a day. We may wait and do the whole thing at the end of the year, and we may do it like at 6 months and then do it again at the end of the year. We won't be doing it every month. It's too much on our local bookkeepers or local CFOs to try to do that every month. So probably tab it up at the end of some period, 6 months or 12 months. We're going to kind of work through that with the CFOs and superintendents. But that while I'm talking, I'll tell you there is a gap because the legislature funded it for FY26, which starts October 1. So anybody who takes leave between July 1 and September 30, the districts will have to pay for it themselves. We did talk about that, but anyway, that did not get put in the supplemental budget. So we can't reimburse in the 26 budget for days that were taken in the 25 budget. So there had to be money in the 25 budget to cover that, and there's not, so the districts will have to do that.
Dr. Mackey, you see, the legislation talks about weeks, not work days, and most leave is taken in work days. So if the school system's if the work day is 3 days, because let's say it's Thanksgiving week, we're not going to approach how many days constitutes 8 weeks, because to me that's an inherent. I'm an old finance guy.
40 days.
It is 40 days.
Yes.
Of actual leave or 40 days?
40 days of leave, not 40. See,
No, it's 40 work days, like 40 days of leave.
So
8 weeks of leave.
So we're really not talking about 8 weeks. We're talking about 40 days, which is the question I proposed.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So we're talking about when we're talking about in the words weeks. But if I'm an administrator, I know that my teachers are going to get up 40 days, and therefore, if I hire for that length of time a teacher to fill in that, then I will only get the $120 a day, no matter what I pay the person to fill in that critical need.
Right, we'll reimburse it by day. So when they turn in their reimbursement form, it'll be how many days total did they need reimbursement for. And it'll be $120 a day. That's in the Budget Act. Not in the law, it's in the Budget Act. $120 a day. And that's for everybody. That'd be $120 for a bus driver, $120 for a school secretary, $120 for a teacher, $120 for the principal, $120 for the superintendent. It's $120 a day.
My suggestion is when you write this before we bring it up, we not use weeks, we use days.
If they don't, we'll take that back. If they don't use, if they don't hire a sub, and they're not required to hire a sub. So let's say that it's a, you know, it's, I don't know, whatever. So if somebody who's out, you know, assistant principal, and they don't hire a sub for that assistant principal, we still reimburse them $120 a day. But there'll be that. So that's one reason it went over the 9.6 million, because we had, in our calculations, we had only included people who needed subs. And then the legislature said, no, you're gonna pay everybody, no matter whether they need a sub or not. So that, and they added the father, so it just, that's why it went above the 9.6 million. But that's fine. I mean, some districts pay a lot more than 120 a day, so that was the reasoning of the legislative leadership is, well, you know, a lot of them are paying 150, so we're going to go ahead and you're going to reimburse them at this rate. And we're glad to do it. We're just the pass-through person, but that is why the number is probably going to go up. Yes.
And so we compensate only the base pay. Does that include, is base pay for science and math teachers?
We compensate $120 a day. It doesn't matter who it is, because the budget says we compensate them at the legislatively approved leave rate, which is $120 a day. So we have districts that that pay long-term subs. They like hire a full teacher and they pay them a full salary, but they get from us $120 a day. And again, if they don't hire a sub at all, they still get from us $120 a day. And then, you know, we're not going to audit that, because we don't audit. The examiners will audit it later. So the examiners, that'll be a part of their regular audit, will become whether they true up the number of days versus how much they turned into the State Department for reimbursement. And so, you know, it'll take a couple of years for this to all kind of soak out, and we'll figure out, you know, if it works or not. The legislature can set the reimbursement rate every year. It's been $120 a day for maybe 5 years. It used to be $100 a day. I think when I started, it was $80 a day. I remember when it was $40 a day. So it's so it has gone up considerably, and 120 is actually pretty close to average for what subs make. Though we do have districts now paying as high as 160, maybe higher, but I know 160 some are doing. So we're paying it, you know, where they are. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Mackey, in the meeting, did we get any feedback from our financial officers regarding any perceived issues immediately that was going to be a problem? Did we get any feedback that was?
No,
they just had a lot of general questions, but not a lot of concerns about how they were going to administer this.
I haven't heard anything.
No.
The questions we've gotten have been about logistics. So.
I think they. The issues I've heard are from the districts that pay long teachers. When they have a teacher out on maternity leave, they hire a teacher and pay that person an actual teacher's salary. And obviously they're going to be really short, but they're already short. They're already doing that, and we, you know, our sub rate is $120 a day. How we do subs now is we assume that every certified employee will take 7 days a year. 7 days a year. And then we just do 7 times 120 times however many certified employees they have. So if they're also paying for, say, subs for teacher aides, you have a lot of special needs classrooms that they have to have a sub for teacher's aide, they have to have a sub for a nurse. That's not involved in the calculation currently. It's just number of certified employees times 7 days times 120. Now, it's obviously an algorithm. Some employees don't take 7 days a year. So you're making money there, but I can assure you there's no district making money on subs because they've got all these like paying for subs for nurses and other folks that they don't get reimbursed for at all. So it's just the algorithm. What we had proposed was to increase the algorithm and just add more days to that calculation, and then we would just send the money to the districts, and then they would figure out how to do it. but the legislature wanted to do this reimbursement pool instead, which is fine, but it just means it costs a lot more because now we're reimbursing people for subs for categories that don't employ subs.
Dr. Mackey, one minor thing, we do contemplate that some people in some situations might take leave before the qualifying event because the language is in connection with, and the trigger would be the first taking of the leave or the actual event. So but that's in the rule, and we do have a question into state personnel about if that is their interpretation as well.
If you have, because of the physician homebounds the teacher.
Right, yeah, that's right. You could have a situation like that, somebody's been on bed rest or something.
That happens more often than not.
It's a lot of, obviously this is why I wanted to talk to you about it, because it's complex and it's a big change. It is also, though, a huge benefit for our employees. I mean, this is the biggest benefit increase in decades and decades to add paid leave for parental leave. And relatively speaking, we run, our part of the budget's $8 billion now, and so even though it's $10-12 million is a lot of money, but relatively speaking, it's a really big benefit for our staff and teachers that's at a relatively low cost. I will, the biggest concern I've heard from some of the locals is the not get reimbursed for the first quarter, and helping their folks to understand it, that they have to, they are going to get 8 weeks of paid leave, but that doesn't mean you can just, that you can stack other leave with it and be off a whole semester. This is going to take some education around it. There is also a provision that anybody who takes this leave, they can't get to the end of it and say, you know what, I want to stay home with my baby, I quit. They have to, if they quit in less than 8 weeks, if they get 8 weeks off, they have to work for 8 more weeks. And if they don't, they have to pay the money back. So they're going to have to come back and work for at least 8 weeks at the end of taking their 8 weeks.
We don't know how it's going to affect the State Department yet.
State Department, no, because those rules will be, but they're real similar to this. Again, that's why we're using personnel, drafted the rules. We've worked with them very closely, so that and working with the 2-year college system. So essentially, we're all going to have the same set of rules. So I would say 99.9% you can assume this would affect our staff too. We're not as highly impacted. I don't want to offend any of my staff in the room, but they all know it. We're not as highly impacted as the LEAs, because mostly we hire people who've spent 20 years in the classroom, then they come to the State Department. So most of us are not having children now. But we do have, I see people making motions in the back. No more. Now, so for us, we have done some calculations. For us, it's going to be mostly our support staff. So our administrative support folks, they are younger usually than the rest of the staff, the professional staff. So we will definitely have folks. Connor will embarrass Connor. He is not going to get to qualify, but very soon in May, his wife is expecting. So
Sunday
he'll be gone, but he'll be out. But he will not get this leave.
He said it was Sunday.
He discussed trying to wait, but
we talked to the governor about it and said, we want you to set the date so Connor can't take off. We want him working.
Dr. Mackey, his baby's due Sunday.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Have we given any thought to what the academic effect of this might be on our students?
That's another thing that superintendents are a little concerned about. They don't want, you don't want to go out and say it, but so I think the big concern that, again, nobody wants to hold against a teacher.
Right.
But let's say I have been, I'm a young teacher. I've been saving my leave to have a baby, which a lot of young teachers do. And now I get 8 weeks of paid leave. But during that year, I'm going to take another 8 weeks off because I've been saving my leave for it. And so now you got a classroom without a teacher for 16 weeks.
Yep.
And they are concerned about that, which is why some of them pay a full-time person to come in, if they can, a certified teacher. But that's not everybody can, obviously. Every system can pay that. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest concern out there. And that's hard to balance. I remember when I was, I think still a principal, it might have been the new superintendent, but I had a teacher come to my office in tears, distraught, because she had found out she was pregnant and she had heard we fire all pregnant teachers. And I said, look around. If we fired teachers for having babies, who would be teaching here? I said, congratulations, we'll work it out. And she was young, didn't have enough, she knew she didn't have enough accumulated leave to take off much time, and she was trying to figure all that out. So I think it'll actually be a recruiting tool and a retention tool in some ways for folks like that, hey, we're going to give you leave, enjoy some time, bond with your child, and then come back. But to your point, it's always been an issue, and it may be exacerbated some.
So will we be encouraging superintendents to hire full-time subs with degrees to fill in some of these situations?
I don't think we can.
No, we can't.
I mean, I don't know how to do that.
Such as it is.
If we don't pay. Yeah. I did it when we could. And but that was when I was in the local. There were always certified teachers in September that still hadn't found a job, and they were willing to do that, to take a sub job. There's not many of those anymore. I think where they can, they do, but this is something I've learned. I didn't know this. Ryan Hollingsworth, we've spent a lot of time talking about this bill, hours and hours, and he's kind of done a little survey, and obviously, as you would expect, the systems that have more money are paying much higher rates. And many of the suburban Birmingham systems are paying full teacher pay. And when you get out in the rural counties, they're paying $120. Some are paying $100.
So this will be an emergency rule next month.
Emergency rule, yes, ma'am.
And then we will let it sit for 35 days.
Yes, ma'am.
It'll 2 tracks.
Be 2 tracks. So you'll be voting on 2 things. You'll vote on the emergency rule to go into effect immediately, and then you'll vote to announce the intent to adopt a permanent rule, and that one will be public comment period will open then. Technically, public comment period opens when you vote, or right after
We can
that.
receive comment, but it's when it's published at the end of the month with legislative services is what officially starts the comment period, but we can receive by email comments from folks once it's been voted upon.
Oh, boy.
We've been getting public comment already. Okay.
Dr. Mack.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to take a short time to recognize the folks who worked on this thing.
Yeah.
It was an incredibly tight turnaround, and nobody wants to see how the sausage is made, but Tina and Connor and John, even our new attorney, helped work on this, and want to also thank our colleagues with Department of Personnel. They were extremely helpful. We had a meeting with Will Parker with the governor's office, got everybody together in 2-year college, and we had a good open discussion with some of these hypotheticals that y'all are presenting here, and we're trying to do our absolute best to make sure nothing's missed. But anyway, I just wanted to thank our staff at OGC for working so hard to get this out to y'all quickly.
And Peggy Rossman, who really worked on that for us.
Thanks.
That's one of the reasons some of our systems don't know how to.
But John is our newest attorney, by the way. John Phillips joined us from the Montgomery County DA's office. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Another prosecutor. I don't know how I keep.
You got me now.
Yeah.
Some of us need a prosecutor.
Yeah. Okay, I want to mention a couple of other bills, and so we're going to do a more in-depth in June. In fact, let me just take an aside and talk about the June and July meetings, work sessions. So in June, we're going to do an update on our planned activities for the semi-quincentennial. Something Ms. Meany had asked about, and so Dr. Busman's going to come and go through that. We did get money in the budget, in our budget, the department did, to celebrate the semi-quincentennial, and we're working with American Village. They're kind of the lead partner in that. But we'll talk about that in the work session. So this will be a short meeting, but we'll have a full work session in June. You will get reading diagnosis. So we have the reading, all of our third graders and second graders are taking their reading tests, and those will go to the districts next week, and then quick turnaround for them to notify parents the week after if their students are, could be retained, have to go to summer programming, that. I've got just basic raw data, and there's nothing in it that scares me, but it's not in a shareable form yet, so it's not going to jump to 30% or something like that, but it's going to be pretty similar to what you saw last year on a score to score. But remember, we raised the cut score. So the number's going to change a little bit as far as the number. I'm going to go ahead and just warn you that you're going to see more students testing below grade level, but only because of the change in the cut score. If we look score to score, students are performing much better. Our curve's going the way we want it to go. But because we raised the cut score, you're going to see a little bit of a difference there. And my media people are all, is he going to share the numbers? No. Those numbers go to the districts first, and then we'll talk about them next month. But the trend is looking good, but as you can expect, when you raise the cut score 10 points, you're going to have fewer students to hit that new score. I have not seen district data myself even, because I'm telling you, this is raw. But statewide, unverified data, that's the overall story. So we'll talk about those scores in June. In the July meeting, we'll have statewide English language arts, math, and science scores. So we'll talk about that. We won't have district data, but we'll have the statewide data. So we're going to talk about all of our statewide returns, and we'll have it by grade. So you'll have a good bit to look at, but we'll look at how our students are doing in ELA, math, and science in the July work session. We don't even have that data yet. Nothing's back on that, but we'll have it by July. And then in August, we'll have the district data. So the next 3 months, we're going to look at test scores. We're going to look at reading, then we're going to look at statewide, and then we'll look at district-wide. And I remind you, I know that some of you are like, well, why can't we do it all at once? Well, we used to do it all at once, but we didn't get it all ready to look at until September. And y'all said, we want to see the data as it becomes available. And so we changed, maybe last year or the year before, to give you, so now we spread it out over months, but you get the data. You're not waiting until September to look at all the data. And I think it's actually more digestible to look at it in chunks like that anyway. So that'll be coming up too. Plus, we may have some more rules we're still going through. Obviously, the legislature's not adjourned. They're set to adjourn next Wednesday. The governor has signed several bills, not signed all of them. There are fewer bills this year that require us to make rules related to those, but there will be some. So you'll see in June too some proposed rule changes related to legislative changes. One of the big changes the legislature has done and the governor has signed is about the cell phones. Now, y'all have been working on that for 2 years and passed a resolution last year on it. So that does go into effect this fall, that students won't be able to have their phones during instructional time. And we'll talk a little more about what that means. It's gone back and forth. There's been a lot of discussion about exactly what that means, but basically they're going to be, they can't have them. I mean, it's straight up. The provision about letting them have their phones at lunch for 8 minutes or something, that we did get that stripped out. That was going to be really problematic because now you got to take everybody's phone away or lock them up and then unlock them and then 8 minutes later lock them up again. I mean, that was going to be almost unadministrable, and so we worked with the legislature to strip that back out so that it'll be back to just you don't have your phone, do it.
It's all cell phones, not flip phones, no cell phones.
It's I don't want to answer that for sure, but I assume that it is. I think it's all cell phones, right? Doesn't say smartphones, it's cell phones. So that'll be in place this fall, so we'll be, yes.
It won't be just cell phones, it'll be.
It's electronic devices.
Electronic devices.
Your pagers too. Can't have your pagers, all that. Well, I know, you laugh, but if we take cell phones away, pagers will come back.
For
So
students only, correct.
for students only, it does not affect the adults.
Okay.
Does not affect the adults. Obviously, we will strongly encourage superintendents that teachers don't need to be having their cell phones out during class time either.
Correct.
That'll be a
But for
local
emergencies.
It'll be a local board policy, and actually, we encourage teachers to have their phones, because that was one of the selling points, because one of the things that parents brought up was if there's an emergency, nobody has a phone, you can't call anybody. Well, so teachers, pretty much all your teachers have a phone now, but we would not want them out scrolling their devices during the day and those kind of things. So that will be a big change. I'm not going to try to go through all of them again. You're going to get a full report. They've been doing a great job every Friday seeing your report. I spend my Saturday mornings going through that and then kind of catching up. And, we assume that all the bills that have been sent to the governor will be signed. We think they will be. Obviously, I can't speak for that. There's a process, but I don't know of any that I think are controversial and won't be signed. The budget, I want to mention a couple of budget issues. I know the budget is done now, and these are not all problems, they're just issues. So one is we'll have to probably draft some rules. I'm looking at my folks. I don't know if I've told them this yet, but I talked to Sonia. So on the new RAISE Act, so the additional funds that go on top of the foundation program funds, I think it doesn't require us to adopt rules, but because we adopt rules in how the foundation program funds are distributed, we probably are going to also adopt some rules on how the RAISE Act funds are distributed. It'll match the law. Obviously, we're not going to amend that, but you'll probably see something around that because the RAISE Act's in place now, so we'll see those bumps for EL students, special needs students, and there are 3 tiers of special needs, students in poverty, and gifted. And those will go into place. Some of those are kind of shifts in money, because like with the gifted line item, the gifted line item is gone, but now there's a gifted weight. So it's driven more toward, where the students are, but it was a shift of money. There is some extra money in there, so it went up some, but they also lost a line item. Same way with at-risk and students in poverty. So there is a poverty weight, but there is the at-risk line item was greatly reduced. One was completely eliminated, and the other one was reduced pretty significantly. So when people come to you this fall and say, I used to get an at-risk grant and I don't get one anymore, that is true because the line item's not there anymore. There will be some, all these people are listening, want to know, but there definitely is, it's a greatly reduced amount, so that will be reduced. The other one is EL. So the EL line item is greatly reduced. There's still some money in it, but that's money to pay the state and regional staff. So none of the LEA money. The LEA money was all stripped out of that and put into the weights. And then they brought money in from the EORF, the Education Savings Account, to cover the rest of that. And it's about $160 million, am I right? It's close to $160 million in new funds. But they're not all new. I want to be careful how I say that. It's about $120 million new, I think, and then the other is shifting these line items into the new formula. But that'll all be fine. We're working on that now. We will get out allocation sheets next week, probably maybe earlier, but to the districts. And this is pretty early. They usually like to get them by the 1st of June, so we're going to get them out much earlier than one of the things that I am probably going to bring to you that you need to think about, again, I should talk to our own people first. So it does allow, the RAISE Act itself allows districts to move funds between those line items. So let's say they could say, we want to move, nobody said this, we want to move we want to take our special ed RAISE Act money and we're going to spend it all on gifted. So we're going to move all of our money, we're going to move it out of special ed and EL and we're going to spend it on gifted. It allows that. But I think I would like to see you adopt a rule that says they have to have the state superintendent's permission to do that. When you do have the authority, in my opinion, to put that in the rules that would allow them, if they want to do transfers of money, that they would have to get our permission. But now that's something you may not agree with, so we need to think about that.
I don't recall, I'm thinking, but was there a provision in the act for evaluation? A requirement for evaluation? A yearly eval?
It is, it's not very clear on what it is, but basically there's a kind of a committee set up that will look at outcomes, undefined outcomes in the districts, and then can make determinations in the future. So I think the way I understand it, and this has still got to be worked out, but so if they say look at the EL and they say, you know what, even though we're putting this money in, turns out our EL districts are not, they're not closing the gap. So what should we do? Should we put more money in? Should we change the way we do it? So there is an evaluation, and obviously you could look at it and say, well, there's 6 of these districts are seeing growth and 3 are not. What's going on that's different in those 3?
Right.
But that's not quite all kind of worked out yet. But there is.
I would think in these early years, we would need to really drill down into how this money's being spent and then the outcomes for academic achievement. Until we get this, we're on solid footing.
I agree, except that it is a very small amount of money, relatively speaking. So the consultants that the legislature hired, they said that to make a difference in academic achievement, they need to fund this at about $1,000 a kid. And I think it's being funded now, it's minuscule, it's less than $100 a kid, I think. And Senator Orr said in committee, we can't expect districts to make huge gains immediately because we're slowly working our way into this. But over time, as we approach the $1,000 per kid, we would need to see.
When you say over time, how much time until we get there?
He didn't say.
So it could be 5 years, it could be 20 years.
It could be. I mean, it depends on how long it takes, I guess, to make that kind of investment. And I don't want to, I don't know. But there's research out there on that. But the research says it's about $1,000 a student in the weights before you see real change, and we're nowhere close to that. And that's not a pushing thing. We didn't have the money to do 1,000. We talked about that, and I got in trouble for talking about it. But it was because that would take it's like $1.5 billion to do that, and so we can't. We couldn't possibly get there in 1 year without some massive income change. So, but it's definitely I think it's a great move. We're moving the right direction. It's a really solid setup. It's and so we're going to move. I think we'll move there. Oh, there's also a piece for charter schools. I forgot about that. 2% per child for charters. But anyway, that's a good question. I think so. The first money is available in 26. So when we come this time next year, we won't even have 1 year's data yet. So I think it would be
October is when it starts.
Yes, October, FY26. So we would have. I think that it's gonna take, I mean, I think realistically, it'll be 36 months before you'll have any data to look at it on. And I think that's kind of what I can't speak for the legislature, obviously, but, you know, they basically kind of pre-funded it for 3 years. So I assume that's kind of what they're thinking too. Let's pre-fund this for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, let's see where we are. Not that they couldn't make changes in between, but they've pretty much set the funding levels for 3 years because they pulled enough money out of the EOR to fund 3 years. So that's kind of, and that's going to be a big change. Again, I'm very excited about it. It's just going to take some work to get there, and that is an issue to think about. The other budget item that I am concerned about. So that one is not a concern. It's an issue. Hear me. It's an issue because it's complex, but it's very exciting to move to that. To keep the foundation program in place and then stack these weights on top of it, I think is an absolutely positive, progressive move. But I have a concern, and that's the price of school buses. We're in trouble. So, as you know, we try to fund school buses, and we fund them on a 10-year rolling cycle. So the theory is if a bus costs $90,000, which is what we used to say they cost, they don't anymore. Then if we give the districts $9,000 per year per bus that is less than 10 years old, then they can make, most of them do lease to own, they can make their lease payments and pay for the bus over 10 years. And then we quit paying for them in 10 years. That's considered the life cycle of a bus. And so at the end of 10 years, they have to buy a new bus to continue to get that funding. If they don't buy a new bus, what we call it falls off. And so they just don't get funding anymore. In 2008, 9, 10, when the economic cycle was way down, we had a lot of districts that said, well, I can balance my budget by not buying new buses. So they had 5 buses that rolled off. They just work on them like a lot of us do our cars. We keep them rolling, and they keep them rolling. But they quit getting any state money for those buses, and they didn't have new buses for which they got money. So their fleet renewal money went down. And we had a lot of districts that got into serious trouble because after 20 years, you can't keep a bus just rolling anymore, and they had no money coming in to pay for new buses, and you don't get them the first year. So they basically had to borrow money to buy buses, and then they could start counting them against state fleet renewal again. And this was a crisis, y'all. This was a true crisis. And for years, we begged, borrowed, and got money in the supplemental to help districts rebuild their fleets. And most of them are pretty well rebuilt now, though we did ask for this year additional money in the supplemental to just kind of get everybody back to unch. And then if we had gotten all the money we asked for in the supplemental, everybody would have an up-to-date fleet. But that money got completely eliminated. Not cut, completely eliminated. So now, with the tariff charges, so most of the bus companies now are adding $2,500 to $4,500 per bus as basically a tariff surcharge. So now we are funding the cost of a bus at 54% true value. So that means I have to get my payment for 2 buses just to make 1 bus's payment. So basically I'm getting half the money from the state to make my lease payments, and the other half have to come out of local funds. If districts do what they did 16 years ago and say, well, the way to make that happen is I only make 1 payment and then I just don't buy 1 new bus, 5 years from now we're going to be in an unbelievable economic crisis that's going to cost us $200 million.
A new school bus is 135.
New school bus now average about 160.
Really?
I know where you're getting that. What 160?
I just Googled it.
Google's behind or buying cheap buses. So the average is about 160. The tariff costs on top of that just drives it up a little bit. But I'm not so much worried about these tariff surcharges I am, as the cost continues to accelerate. So the cost of steel keeps going up. Everything that you put in a bus keeps going up. And parents are demanding air conditioning on buses, which is about another 12 to 15,000.
So the 160 is not an air-conditioned bus?
It is, yes.
It is, okay.
Yeah, it's air conditioned.
Okay.
Most of them are buying air conditioned buses.
That's what I thought.
Dr. Reynolds may not have an air conditioned bus there.
Oh, they're quoting you, Dr. Mackey.
Are they?
Yep.
That's good. Good person to quote. So the price, it's accelerating fast. There's nothing for you to do about it. But in August, when we come back and have our, sit down, you get those big spreadsheets, I think we've got to talk, we've got to talk about the actual cost of running the system, because the school bus cost really worries me. Because I saw a lot of systems get upside down, 15, 16 years ago, and then take years to get out of it. And it's better not to go into debt than to claw your way out of debt. So we need to try to think about that, work with the legislature to, we're going to try to think about ways we can increase the funding level. We've never been at 100%, but I think, Mr. Watts, weren't we at 85 or 90% at one time?
That is correct, yes. And right now, as it relates to a new school bus, they're being funded now at about 54%.
Have we ever stepped in as a state with other states, like southern states, to help negotiate sort of a contract price for school buses to alleviate some of this? Because I know when I was a local school board member and we bought buses, there would be some discrepancy between company A and company B. There'd be a slight differential. And you naturally, you want to go and save as much money as you can, but I wonder if we've ever stepped in as a state and looked at, like when we buy milk at the local level, we would go in with 3 or 4 other school districts to buy our milk on contract to reduce the price. I just wonder if there's...
We do have districts that do that. We've not gone with other states because they have different states have different rules about what has to be on the bus and how they have to be painted and all that, so it's hard to, but for our state, we do have basically a statewide bid process.
Yes, and different cooperatives that various districts work with in an effort to get the price down when they put those bids out on the streets.
And it has driven the cost down, because I can remember when Jefferson County was buying buses significantly less than anybody around them because they bought so many more buses. So purchasing agreements and cooperatives do help. But they are still purchased at the local level. So we don't purchase at the state level.
No,
Some states do.
I was just thinking if there was a way to incentivize from the state level to get a flat fee for the specs on a bus that we require, and then go to a manufacturer and negotiate some sort of deal. I mean, we know about how many buses we need to buy historically every year. Surely there's a way to come at this from another angle.
Good point. We're open to everything, so we'll work on that. And route consolidation does help. So y'all I think I've mentioned it in one of my reports, Sumter County, when we've been in, of course, they're under intervention, but one of the issues there is they were bleeding money in transportation, and we reduced the number of routes they run by a third. So they were just needed really to go in and look at their mapping system and which buses were more full than others. And so we were able to, and that's another thing districts can do. Sometimes you have creep, so you add a route because you got a group of kids over here, and over time you can have several extra routes, and you got to go back and say, wait a minute, how many of these can be consolidated? And then you have to purchase fewer new buses. We do have their standards about how long we want kids to be on a bus, so that doesn't work everywhere, but it does work. We'll look at purchasing, and these tariff surcharges may drop off. I'm not sure they're not we're sending you a letter telling you we're going to charge this, but as you know, that may not hurt on the news this morning that the tariff negotiations would some country are going on, and so they could drop, and if they do, we assume those surcharges would drop off. But the cost
It's not.
is still going up. Yeah, over time, it's going up. The cost is going up much quicker than fleet renewals going up to cover it.
Eric, may I ask, are the buses that we're receiving, are they good quality buses, or are we finding out that for this amount of money, they're still, as in anything, the old
Well-
buses were always built a little bit better,
Yeah, I think
But
they're
are you-
fine. We've had,
But the AC also complicates it because it's another
it does, so
issue
it's,
under the hood, so to speak.
taking an old bus and converting it to put AC on is very inefficient. It doesn't work well, one, because the engines are made, adding AC to the bus is a lot. And so the engine may not be of the right strength to run the AC. And so then you compromise the length of time your engine will work. So they've told us, or I keep being told, it's just not good to convert them, but as you buy new ones, they're built for that. No, we seem to have, there are only about 4 companies that build buses.
Right.
They're all good. We have had we had a recall this year on some buses. That only if it was one vendor, but the districts are kind of working through that. I can't remember what the recall was, but it affected several of our districts. So you had to have something done, and it was a federal recall, something by the Transportation Administration, that they made the bus company come back and fix
I have
it.
one other question. Special needs buses, they're on a different
Yeah.
route system, so that's an expenditure.
That's right. And they're more expensive because most of them have lifts. Not all of them do, but most of them have chair lifts, and they're smaller.
Right.
But they also have lower capacity because you have wheelchairs on there. You may have aids on there, so you can put a lot fewer people on one of those buses. But that average includes that, so they cost more.
Correct.
But they're
Are districts allowed to, so you've got an affluent district that has a lot of buses, and they have a big maintenance shop, and they maintain 100%, and they just recycle a 10-year-old bus. They don't try to keep going. They've planned and prepared. So they've got buses that are coming offline. Are they allowed to put those buses out to districts that cannot afford or may not be able to purchase, and allow those buses to go between districts?
So they, there's nothing that forbids districts from buying from other districts, but if it's more than 10 years old, essentially no.
They wouldn't.
So what we encourage them, a lot of them have buses over 10 years, we encourage them to make them what we call non-route buses. So they can take them, field trips, football, that kind of stuff, but not to be running daily routes with them. So then and they just sub a bus out. You have a bus that's in for tire change, you use a non-route bus. So a lot of our districts have non-route buses, and they do have to maintain those and keep them going. But because they're not on a daily route, you can also stretch them out for longer. But the foundation law is set up for districts to buy new buses and replace them every 10 years. And it is, I don't want to say it's absolutely forbidden, but it is strongly, advised against buying used buses. Now, our systems that contract for their buses, sometimes the contractors buy used buses from other systems because they cannot get fleet renewal. And so we do have districts that contract for bus services, and what they do is buy old buses, 10-year-old buses from other systems, and then they run routes with that, but the responsibility is on the contractor. The district cannot get fleet renewal for buses it does not own. So if the contractor owns them, then they don't get fleet renewal for them. It is, we got a few systems, I don't have any still contract, but it's the numbers going down. The districts figure out it's a losing proposition. I was in one, Jacksonville contracted, because the first year you make money. and you lose money every year after that. But the way the law is set up, if you want to move from contract to fleet renewal, you can, but you have to, the first year, you have to eat all the cost. You have to purchase an entire fleet of buses on your own, out of your accounts, and then you can start charging them to fleet renewal. But that first year is a heavy expense, which is why districts, love to go from contract services to owning their own buses, but it's really expensive to do. There are only less than 10.
I think it's about 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken.
We've had some that famously won. You'll remember. Did Huntsville did they convert? I don't remember if they converted or not. But there are lots of, I'm not against contractors, whoever's listening, but there are a lot of issues with contract services with buses that we don't have if we own the buses, including some liability things we have to work through. But they can do that, but we don't encourage districts to buy old buses because, again, if they do, that's 100% cost out of the local board's budget. The state will not pay one dime toward a bus that's 10 years and a day old.
What about the cost of the electric buses? I know I have one district that wrote grants and they now running electric buses. Are they $160,000?
I don't know the cost. They're higher. No, they're higher.
Yes.
But the operational cost is lower because you don't have brakes. You don't have. They use a traditional braking system. Don't have brake pads. The electricity is a lot cheaper than the diesel.
Okay.
So they are cheaper to operate, but they are more expensive. There have been a lot of federal grants to help people buy electric buses, but I don't. Those grants are getting more and more rare too.
I'm assuming the State Department is the one who set up the 10-year rule. Is there some?
I think it's in the law. It's actually in the foundation program law.
So you think the legislature did that?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way that we could request that it be a 12-year, because a 10-year vehicle is not that old anymore, because they do make them better?
Yes, ma'am. We have, I don't know, the answer is yes. When I was at SSA, we went through that, and there were some issues with it. So at the time, we were talking about going to 12 years, and the legislature, actually not, I shouldn't say the legislature, a lot of legislators at the time really liked that, because what they saw was, instead of giving you $10,000 a year for 10 years, I would give you $8,000 a year for 12 years. And it only cost me $96,000 instead of $100,000. I'm like, no, that's not what we're asking for. And
Dr. Mackey, the other factor is in city systems, a 12-year-old bus, they don't relate to miles. They're related to just calendar years. And it would be more prudent to deal with miles or hop time on a bus.
You have
it is detrimental to county school systems. You have a 10-year-old bus, and I worked in the county, is far more worn out than a city bus, obviously.
We do, if you go from 10-year to 12-year lease too, there's a problem. So most of the lenders, and most of our folks do like lease to own, they want to do 10-year leases. So another problem we ran into then was, even if the legislature went to a 12-year cycle, the lenders were still going to put all their buses on 10-year cycle. So now, the legislature was looking at, what they were looking at the time was to reduce the amount of money they had to put into fleet renewal. But the districts were still going to have to lease their buses on a 10-year cycle. So I'm not saying it couldn't. We could certainly reopen that again. But the last time we tried that, we just talked in circles for a year and stayed at 10. But it is in the foundation program law, the 10-year cycle. Okay. It's not a State Department. Well, y'all can see why I'm worried about it.
Yeah.
It's not the fun stuff to talk about, like teaching kids to read and do math. But we could end up in a serious financial problem with school buses being upside down. I mean, in 5 years, if we don't address it, probably in the next 2 budget cycles. So now that tariff thing, again, any legislators out there that said, Dr. Mackey, don't go after us. I mean, that all came about at the end. The budget was already developed. So there was no way to go back and kind of add that into the this year's budget. You know, things take a long time, but next year, knowing that where we are, I think we've got to have a serious conversation about that. So, not trying to throw anybody under the bus. It's just where we are at the moment. And we always have to be thinking ahead. So that's kind of the update for now. Again, there'll be more written stuff coming as the bills are signed. And then in June, we can talk more about it. We have a great lunch upstairs. And other than any other questions y'all have, yes.
Any other questions?
Sorry, Mr. Markham had something.
Ones of you that want to put the Microsoft license on your device, I have some IT people next door that'll step in here. They'll have to get your password and stuff from you. If that's something you want to do, maybe you can do it during lunch. I'll have to just see it can be done. But I want that done. If you haven't already done it, some of you may already have, but just stay around. I'll have them step in.
Step around. Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for a good meeting.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
This is in Assembly now, right? Did you say that?
It is.
Thanks, Nora.
Best of luck. Give me